This is the Sabbath School lesson for the first quarter, 2022.
Welcome to Lesson 13, Let Brotherly Love Continue, ready for teaching on March 26. It's part of the series In These Last Days, The Message of Hebrews, authored by Dr. Felix Cortes, Associate Professor of New Testament Literature in the Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary at Andrews University. And I'm your reader for today, Dr. Percy Harrold. Sunday, March 20, Caring for God's People. Read Hebrews chapter 13, verses 1 and 2, Romans 12:13, 1 Timothy 3:2, Titus 1:8, and 1 Peter 4, verse 9. What was the role of hospitality in the early church? First of all, Hebrews 13, 1 and 2, let brotherly love continue. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing some have unwittingly entertained angels. Romans 12:13, distributing to the needs of the saints, given to hospitality. 1 Timothy 3:2, a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behaviour, hospitable, able to teach. Titus 1 verse 8, but hospitable, a lover of what is good, sober-minded, just, holy, self-controlled. And 1 Peter 4 verse 9, be hospitable to one another without grumbling. Christianity was a wandering movement that often depended on the hospitality of both Christians and non-Christians. The instruction to not forget to show hospitality probably does not simply refer to the failure to think about taking someone in, but about willful neglect. Paul does not have in mind hospitality only for fellow believers. He reminds his readers that by entertaining strangers, some have unwittingly entertained angels, as we read in Hebrews 13:2. He probably had in mind the visit of the three men to Abraham and Sarah that we read about in Genesis 18, verses 2 to 15. And that reads, so he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, three men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them, and bowed himself to the ground, and said, my Lord, if I have now found favour in your sight, do not pass on by your servant. Please let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will bring a morsel of bread, that you may refresh your hearts. After that you may pass by, inasmuch as you have come to your servant. They said, do as you have said. So Moses hurried into the tent of Sarah and said, quickly, make ready 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd, took a tender and good calf, gave it to a young man, and he hastened to prepare it. So he took butter and milk and the calf which he had prepared, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree as they ate. Then they said to him, where is Sarah your wife? So he said, here in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life, and behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son. Sarah was listening in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I surely bear a child, since I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, no, but you did laugh. Brotherly love toward those in prison implied not only that believers remembered prisoners in their prayers, but also that believers provided relief through material and emotional support. There was a risk of willful neglect of prisoners. Those who provided material and emotional support to those condemned by society identified themselves with them. In some sense, they became partners with them. and made themselves vulnerable to social abuse, as we read in Hebrews 10:32 to 34. For it was fitting for him, for whom are all things, and by whom are all things, in bringing many sons to glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through sufferings. For both he who sanctifies and those who are being sanctified are all of one, for which reason he is not ashamed to call them brethren, saying, I will declare your name to my brethren. In the midst of the assembly I will sing praise to you. And again, I will put my trust in him. And again, here am I and the children whom God has given me. Inasmuch then as the children have partaken of flesh and blood, he himself likewise shared in the same, that through death he might destroy him who had the power of death, that is, the devil, and release those who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. For indeed, he does not give aid to angels, but he does give aid to the seed of Abraham. Therefore, in all things he had to be made like his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people. For in that he himself had suffered, being tempted, he is able to aid those who are tempted. Brotherly love toward those in prison implied not only that believers remembered prisoners in their prayers, but also that believers provided relief through material and emotional support. There was a risk of willful neglect of prisoners. Those who provided material and emotional support to those condemned by society identified themselves with them. In some sense, they became partners with them and made themselves vulnerable to social abuse, as we read in Hebrews 10:32 to 34. But recall the former days in which, after you were illuminated, you endured a great struggle with sufferings, partly while you were made a spectacle both by reproaches and tribulations, and partly while you became companions of those who were so treated. For you had compassion on me in my chains, and joyfully accepted the plundering of your goods, knowing that you have a better and an enduring possession for yourselves in heaven. Paul's exhortation uses images and language to encourage the readers in regard to prisoners. First, the author evokes the reader's own support for their incarcerated brethren in the past. They had become companions or partners to those who had been publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, as we read in verse 33. Second, the language of mistreatment echoes the example of Moses, who chose rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin, as we read in Hebrews 11:25. Finally, Paul captures the ideal of brotherly love. He reminds the readers that they also are in the body, as we read in Hebrews 13:3. Remember the prisoners as if chained with them, those who are mistreated, since you yourselves are in the body also. They share the same human condition and should treat others as they would like to be treated if they were in the same circumstances, that is, in prison. The people should then provide material and emotional support to prisoners, showing them that they are not abandoned. And so to finish today, what more can we do for those who are in prison, whether church members or not? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.